Hi, this is Ezekiel Dasho, and I wanted to quickly take a moment to look at something that I think can be very helpful to understand when you're drawing, and it's something that comes up quite a bit in drawing and modern portrait drawing and just all kinds of life drawing, and that's how we look at cloth and folds in cloth. And we basically can approach it like we approach any other object, and start out by sketching the frame. And I'm going to do this relatively quickly, and I'm not going to be a huge stickler for accuracy on this. I'm just going to sort of run through it, and it's something that comes up very frequently, and it's, I think, has a big impact when you approach it the right way. Can have a big impact on your quality of your work. And sometimes these folds in clothing and in cloth can just crop up in the picture, and if you don't treat it the right way, it can really have a pretty big impact on the look of the entire piece. So I basically just started off by drawing this main triangle shape, and we'll give it a little bit of shading here. And the main thing to do here is similar when we draw hair or other glasses of water, other images that may have lots of, I don't know, you want to call it fluidity or just irregularity or lots of flow. Just get the main shape of the object first, and then come back in to refine the details. And so some of these folds will start to define themselves as we go. And just drawing softly and not drawing any hard lines as per usual. And then finding these places where the darkness is the most pronounced, so that you can get it out on the page. So like this area here in this fold, there's this dark corner, and you could treat that in a couple of different ways. Maybe cross-hatching would be the simplest. You see this shadow here too. So it's these areas of light and shadow that are going to, I think, most effectively communicate this object. And sometimes it can be tempting to just imagine lines around everything that we see, even if there are no lines, because when we first learn to draw, everything's got to have a line around it. That's how you define everything. And so cartoons, traditionally would have a black line pretty much around everything. But then as the ability of the artist evolves, the tendency to communicate in terms of contrast and light and shadow, and you still perceive boundaries that are as real as the boundary between a hard line and a place in the other place in the picture, but you can create those boundaries using contrast instead of just always using a hard line for everything. So now it's, I think, very similar to this concept of drawing a glass of water, where you have this shape and you're just looking for the little, I almost want to say squiggles, but they're not necessarily squiggles on this. They're areas where the darkness is more defined than others, and those, like this crease here. And it's just the same as any other life drawing. You just draw what you see. But the approach is maybe a little bit less obvious, even though it's such a simple object. And similar to drawing flowers or something, that there's a lot of complexity there, but once you sort of establish the approach that you're going to take, that does a lot of the work for you, so that you don't have to count every single element in the you don't have to count every flower petal, or count every bubble in a glass of soda, or count every crease and fold or in a napkin, or count every feather on a bird's wing when you're drawing it. Like you get the outer shapes right, and then start doing the impressions. Similar with hair too. And then it starts to become a matter of detail. And so underneath here we've got this pretty strong shadow. And I apologize if I'm drawing from a live object right now rather than using the screen. So I tried to take a picture that would be pretty exact to the live object, but my live object might be a little different, and hopefully that's not causing any trouble for anybody out there. So I'm constantly asking myself, is what I have on my page, is it as subtle as what I see in real life, or is it too pronounced, or is it not, is it not subtle enough? Is it too subtle? That sort of thing. And I want to get it just right. But I'm also conscious of how long the video is going to run and that sort of thing. So here you do see some of these squiggles and stuff like that. And just kind of shading in some of those variation spots before you go in and like give it a quicker layer to I'm going to do about the same thing here, as I'm just drawing some of the main shading areas that I see, or shaded areas, and then I'm going to go over very quickly and lightly with this motion to give the cloth the color that it has. And up here, I'm going to just, with the sharpest part of my pencil, just put in a little bit of that I see there, just because it's there and I see it. It's maybe the seam of the napkin. And I see also there's a little bit of shading coming here. And again over here. So sometimes what I like to do on these is, usually you'd maybe build from dark to light or build from light to dark. And sometimes I deviate a little bit on these. So like I'll draw a dark spot here and then go over it with a lighter level, knowing that lighter level will increase the darkness if I go over it, and we'll let it remain the same if I don't. And so we'll just finish this up here. And we see some of these shadows here. And now we've got some of these details too. We can definitely take a quick look at them, but the threads on the napkin, I'm not going to count them. I'm just going to see which side the shadows are striking from and kind of endeavor to make it look like the thread is coming from that side, or the motion of the. Then I'm going to shade over it and leave some of those areas a little bit lighter to give it that look that it's sort of, the thread has captured the light a little bit. Maybe just go along with these two and using a lighter touch here because it's farther away and it doesn't have to be as crystallized as the ones closer to the viewer. And something like that. Not going to spend too much time worrying about it, but it's a little detailed and I see it, and as a way to just study it and try to get what I see onto the page. And maybe let's amp up that angle a little bit there. And now we're looking at the shadows underneath the napkin here, and very lightly going to just draw the shapes that I see from the shadows too. That's pretty much what I'm seeing. And definitely don't worry about it if it's not completely exact. Sometimes a tendency can be to worry about that, but and that's good. Your tendency to exactitude and accuracy will serve you well, but don't sweat it on everything, because some things are just better gone through quickly. And let's see what the general, shape of the shadow, the motion of the shadow. And then this one too, maybe got multiple light sources in here playing around with this object, so the shadows are going from different places. And underneath the napkin there's a sharp dark line, and then closer to the napkin there's a deeper shadow. So now I'm just going to quickly look at these areas that maybe are bright white and haven't been touched yet, and they're just too flat. So I'm going to go over them very quickly, very lightly, so that I can maintain the brightness for the most part. And then maybe come through here and do some more of the so yeah, I mean, at this point it's kind of just finishing touches and just looking for any places maybe that could benefit from the little extra darkening up. I see some shadow that's being cast by the fold and the napkin here, and I could bring that up a little bit. And I don't want to draw lines where there are no lines. I just want to get what I see onto the page, and so just constantly sort of checking and rechecking, and don't be afraid to make just corrections right on there, because for these studies I'm not trying to have a piece that I want to hang on the wall when I'm done. If I do, that's great, but really the goal here is just to learn something for my own self, and so that I can make improvements to my own skills. And I just wanted to share the process with you, so I hope it's useful to me. I mean, these simple things, I've done them before and I'll do them again, and every time I do, I learn something. And so that's one of the reasons I would definitely recommend practicing on simple objects like this. And I think that it helps me, and definitely hope that it helps everyone else who gives it a shot. And this could be darker here too. And this could be and let's see, where else might I? Make some little adjustments. And over here, I've almost forgotten to give it any shading, which I don't want to do, because I've said this a million times, but if it's just flat white, it will look so flat and so bright that it'll throw everything else off. And it just doesn't look natural. And so maybe if I was going to self-correct on my own, I would say, this line here is too stark, maybe. And there are ways that I can approach correcting that without erasing or anything. And one of those ways would be by just subtly shading beside it, so that that contrast started to come down a little bit. But not going to worry about it too much. I think that overall it still has the desired effect of a So there you have it. A napkin. If this was helpful to you, don't forget to like and subscribe. And this is Ezekiel Dasho, and see you next time.